In a trial that's captivated Australia, today a final twist. The jury found Greg Lynn guilty of Carol Clay's murder, but not guilty of murdering Russell Hill.
There was a sense of surprise. I'd not counted on the notion of a split verdict.
Does your team stand by your case and how you handled it?
The verdict was met with silence outside the court. Greg Lynn's son refused to comment.
What do you think of the outcome today?
This afternoon, the victims' families issued a joint statement saying they were devastated at the not guilty verdict in relation to Russell Hill's murder.
I think it's been one of the more complex and difficult trials that I've followed.
This case is one of the biggest we've seen in a decade. It's got all the things that excite the media and the public. We begin with a mystery.
March 18, 2020, Victoria's remote Alpine National Park. Greg Lynn, a Jetstar pilot and avid game hunter, arrived at a location known as the Bucks campsite in the hopes of killing deer. A day later, two elderly campers arrived, 74-year-old Russell Hill and his 73-year-old companion, Carol Clay.
You've got sort of almost grey nomads. We've got a couple that go camping.
Russell Hill was an amateur radio enthusiast. At about 6 p.m. on March 20, he put a call out to fellow ham radio operators. No one heard from him or Carol again.
Police are concerned for the welfare of two campers in their 70s.
A married man and his female companion gone without a trace.
We really don't know what has caused Russell and Carol's disappearance.
The campsite was come across by another camper or a bushwalker. They've then alerted police to finding the campsite, and the scenario in broad terms is we've got a late model four-wheel drive, we've got a campsite that's been burnt, and we've got a wallet on the front seat of the car, of the four-wheel drive.
Missing persons detectives began appealing to the public for information in the hope Carol and Russell were still out there. The pair had known each other since high school, but had married different people.
What was not known, of course, is that they had had a long-term relationship. And so that was the secret life.
But police also had eyes on one man they believed had critical information. Pilot Greg Lynn.
The key thing was that Mr. Lynn's vehicle was photographed when it came back onto a main road at the time that Hill's phone pinged in the same location. So that puts him and probably another dozen cars as the most likely.
On the 14th of July 2020, police arrive at his western suburbs home to quiz Greg Lynn on his whereabouts around the time Carol and Russell vanished.
When they go to Lynn's place, of course, the car has changed colour.
Almost 6 months later, police obtained a warrant to tap Greg Lynn's phone and track and surveil his car.
Whilst this person became a stronger suspect during the investigation, the police may have been falling short to be able to say, you know what, have we got enough to charge this person?
Tonight, a critical breakthrough in the investigation.
On November 7, 2021, Victoria Police took to prime-time television in an attempt to keep leads from going cold and to get Greg Lynn talking.
Police already know that he belongs to a similar vehicle, if not the vehicle, if they've got the number, and then seeing what reaction comes from it, and the talk over the devices happened.
We can reveal a significant...
Detectives say Greg Lynn watched the 60 Minutes story where police revealed that a blue Nissan Patrol with a distinct canopy was of particular interest to them. His wife Melanie Lynn noted the car shown in the program looked almost exactly like the one parked in their driveway.
As we know, the police set up a CCTV camera out the front of the house. They see him taking off the canopy.
On November 22, 2021, Greg Lynn makes his way back up here to the high country. Now, unbeknownst to him, police are right on his tail and are hours away from arresting him.
A senior airline pilot is being questioned by homicide detectives tonight after a day of extraordinary developments in the missing campers case.
I have been told questioning will go long into the night.
He arrives and he's told it's been a long time, have a shower, have a sleep. We're in no hurry. And the interview goes on for a long time.
Over several hours, Greg Lynn gradually begins to tell detectives what happened. This November 2021 interview was key evidence in Greg Lynn's trial.
I panicked to save myself. This was at a time when I was just finding a really happy place in the world. Family, career, and my personal life outside of work, so this for me was a disaster. I'm innocent of murder. I haven't behaved well. I've made some poor decisions, but murder, as I understand it, I'm innocent.
Lynn gives a version of events that, in fact, largely what he said to the courts, which was, yeah, I was there. It's a horrible accident. I panicked.
Greg Lynn tells police that when he returns from hunting, Russell Hill approaches him and confronts him about the proximity of where he's hunting to the campsite and the safety of his gun. But Greg Lynn then tells police that Russell Hill leaves back towards his tent and he goes back towards his campsite. Greg Lynn then said that Russell walked towards his car and picked up the pilot's gun and he began firing it. Then there's a tussle over the shotgun. Greg Lynn claims the elderly camper pulls the trigger, accidentally killing his lover. He then comes at Mr. Lynn with a knife. The pair struggle again and the older man falls on the knife. Now, the prosecution and police say that this story that both deaths were a tragic accident is completely implausible. The prosecution told the court that Greg Lynn returned from hunting, he killed Russell Hill and then he killed Carol because he didn't want there to be a witness.
He proceeded to clean the crime scene, as well as any forensic scientist could possibly do. And this is what the prosecution was arguing, that this was entirely inconsistent with a person who had panicked.
Whilst in custody, Lynn also told police he transported Russell and Carol's body in his trailer and disposed of them off a remote track, going on to admit that he later burnt their remains.
He's locked down in COVID. As soon as he can, he gets out. He goes back to the scene. He pours kerosene on the remains. It's the highest heat and the most effective. And then he smashes the remains into smithereens.
As was quite rightly put to Lynn by the prosecutor, was the fact that you could have contacted the police. The crime scene would have supported your version of events. And he gave that a lot of thought before he answered and basically said, well, to paraphrase or something along the lines, well, whether it didn't come to his mind at that stage, he was in self-preservation mode.
Theoretically speaking, a jury could find that because of the post-offence conduct and so on, there was an intent to kill. There was sufficient evidence for the gunshot injury. As far as a knife injury is concerned, there's no pathology evidence and there's no forensic evidence to demonstrate one way or the other. And that being so, the jury would have said, well, we'd be guessing. Whereas with the gunshot injury, they know there was a gun discharged and they know that the death was caused by a gun.
Robert Richter is a high-profile barrister whose past clients include George Pell and Hoddle Street murderer Julian Knight.
The jury system did what it is meant to do. Next is whether or not there is an appeal against the conviction, and I suspect there will be. And we'll all wait with bated breath to see how that works out.
Today, Greg Lynn showed no emotion when the verdict was delivered. He'll be sentenced next month.